Hey there, viewers, and welcome back to the Self-Made Auto Channel. Today, joining me, Miss Hannah and the lovely Miss Marie, and we're going to be doing a basic maintenance, or I guess oil change, if you will, on Miss Hannah's car. I'm going to bring you guys along, show you what happens here at SMA when we bring cars in for this basic service. Perhaps it'll help you in servicing your own vehicle. What's step one, ladies?
Pop the hood.
No, step one is find a friend with a lift. Makes the job a lot easier. But if you don't, make sure you're jacking your car up, supporting it with jack stands. And if you don't know how to do that, make sure you research that prior to doing it. Definitely don't want to get under your car when it's just on a jack. We have the car sitting on a lift. First thing we usually do is whatever you can do before you pick it up in the air. So we're going to check some of the fluids under the hood, which on this car are going to be coolant, brake fluid, washer fluid. We're going to look at the air filter. Another good habit to get into is to actually check your oil prior to changing it. If you don't know, how much oil your car is consuming, which on Miss Hannah's car consumes a fair amount.
Straight oil.
How much do you go through?
I check it once a week and I just fill it.
Oh, okay.
Once a week.
Yeah.
It's sometimes down, it sometimes isn't. Depends on how many miles I put on it.
Well, there you go. And then again, we'll do like just visual inspection of the hood. We're going to look at anything obvious, rodent damage. We're going to, just take a peek at the belt if it's visible, see if that's starting to crack. This car has a cartridge style filter, so we'll be pulling that out and letting that drain. And that's about it. If it's, you can look up on the cowl where the fresh air intake screens are for the HVAC unit. If there's a bunch of crud on that, you can clean them off, blow them off, vacuum them, whatever. And just an overall visual inspection to see if anything looks out of place. Miss Marie's going to pull the cover off the top of the air filter. Miss Hannah's filling up the washer jug. All stuff that we would do during a normal service. Now those screws might not come all the way out, or they do.
2 pumps? 2 or 3 pumps?
3, sorry. I'll take your screws, and then you're going to want to unplug the mass airflow, so you got to wiggle that little gray piece out, which could be a real stink pot. Oh boy, it's just the gray piece that moves.
Okay, get it.
Coming in. Just give it a little flick. Oh, cut yourself. There you go. That pops off like so, and then
This comes up on?
use this. Loosen up that clamp. Nope. The clamp there, young lady.
Oh,
Hiding on you.
Duh.
Why are you turning all red?
Not turn on.
Oh, okay. That's
My
probably,
natural
that's
glow.
probably good. And then we'll just wiggle that right off. Then pick up the front and slide her out.
Perfect.
And pull out the filter and have a look-see.
Oh. Whoa! So, all kinds of colors.
It's getting a little crusty. Certainly I've seen worse, but it is getting time for replacement. And it feels a little saturated. The water sitting in there is just a little tiny bit. We've had a tremendous amount of rain recently, and you can see some of the discoloration on it. So we're going to get our new filter. It feels soggy. So Miss Hannah's going to pull the oil filter on this car. So these Ecotechs use a little cartridge filter. It goes right in the top of the engine. And so we'll get a new filter. Shouldn't be too tight. New O-ring that goes on that. And it's important that you do this prior to pulling the drain plug, because there is an oil, in that reservoir that's going to be in there. And by pulling the filter out, it allows it to all drain down.
You just keep turning.
Yep. It should. Oops. Let's see something. There you go. Yeah. And then we'll get a rag, because these things can be messy. You just kind of cock them sideways, let them drip for a little bit, and then stick the rag under it and pull her out, and then we'll pop the filter off and get the new one on there. And when that's out, I usually like to take a rag and just wipe around the inside edge of it. Sometimes the O-ring sits down a little further on the threads and can build up a little bit of junk on top of it, so it's always a good idea just to make sure that's clean. I got Miss Hannah a pick, so you're going to pick off the O-ring. Just get underneath that. Always make sure you're changing out that O-ring. Filter should always come with one. There's a new filter, and this is where it seals on the bottom inside the housing. And then this is the new O-ring, which we'll put on last. Go ahead and pull your filter right out. Now that filter snaps in on these fingers on the top. And then just look in there, make sure it's clean. And then is there any junk or anything around the threads? Sometimes just take a rag and just, wipe it off on the outside. Now you can take and roll your new O-ring on there. Kind of difficult with gloves on sometimes. Don't ever use like a pick or a screwdriver. It's best you just roll them on and they self-straighten and recenter on there. And then also make sure that you get it in the groove that belongs. And I actually had one of these cars come in. It's actually Ecotech. The guy had it jammed into threads here, and it was almost impossible to get that cap off.
Am I in the right one, or does it go down farther?
No, you're good. It's in that big groove, yep. And that's a mistake you can make, because so you look at it and you see that groove right there. It looks like the O-ring can go there, but if you follow it around, that's right where the thread starts. So be careful with that. And then you go ahead and click that back in.
Just like this?
Yep, and give it a push. There you go. That's it. Then we can put it back in the car. Good idea to take a little bit of new oil, just wipe on that O-ring, and it'll slip together a lot easier. And then you just want to make sure that when you put that back in, that you start it by hand. Don't ever use a tool or just plastic thread. You should be able to screw it in, right down to just about the O-ring by hand. And then when you're tightening it, don't go full grill on it, because the next guy won't be able to get it off too easy.
That tight enough?
Yeah, just a little snug. So there is an actual torque spec on them, but just ginger, I guess it would be. Now before we go up in the air with it, I always like to remove the oil cap, just kind of stick it to the side. Not where it's going to fall down. These I usually flip them upside down and set them on top of one of the coils or near it. We can take wintertime is coming, so we're going to check the coolant to make sure that it's up to par temperature wise. Now it's not the only coolant check you can do. You can also test the pH level in them, and then same with brake fluid. We'll look, see where that's at. Now if that is down below the maximum, don't add fluid to it, because as your brake pads wear, your fluid level goes down. So a lot of times that can be an indicator if it's down the minimum mark. A lot of times if that was full when the pads are new, that's an indication that you will need some brake service. And the other thing you can do, you can get brake fluid test strips to check the amount of moisture that's in them. So he's going to pull the lid off the coolant reservoir. Now if your car is hot, don't just yank it off like that, because you might get a face full. We're going to use a little antifreeze hydrometer and fill it up just to see what the freeze protection is at. Give it a good squeeze. Oh man, she's leaking. We grabbed the broken one.
Shame on you.
What kind of show you running here?
There you go.
So I'm just squeezing the sides because this is the one I have that leaks, oddly enough. And we can see there's a little float in it. Let me zoom you guys in on that. We can see her freeze protection is good to about 40 below zero, which should be good for our climate. So hopefully you guys can see that. The little floater in there with the little pointer is just above minus 34. So if it gets below 40 below zero, Tanner, stay home, because your car
not get below.
Your car will be frozen.
Everyone should be home if it's below 40.
You grab a light here. Like I say, we'll just have a peek at the fluid, which we can see it's just below the max line. It is getting very dark and contaminated. It should be flushed. So if let's say Hannah was just a normal, regular schmo customer, I would recommend that service to them, and let them make the decision from there. So we'll just give it the rest of the little visual once over. This battery on this car is a little bit hidden, but not too bad to get to. One thing you can look at, or you want to look at, is, if we can get it off here, is just kind of visual inspection on the battery terminals, which are on this side that you can't see. Just make sure they're clean and tight. Doesn't look like a chia pet growing. The big green crusty ball on the end. And again, this is a spot where rodents like to live, under the little cover, and can be quite a menace. So we'll pop that back on. Other things we'll look at visual inspection, just like coolant hoses, heater hoses. Just kind of give them a pinch, see if they're hard and crusty. They'll almost make like a cracking type sound when you squeeze them. And then, you're just looking for, coolant leaks, just anything that is out of the ordinary.
Don't hold the full better as well.
And then on this car, the serpentine belt is a little better, a little more visible from the bottom. Just take a peek at the radiator, make sure you don't see any of the snail trails running down it from, the Dexcool leak. Coolant leaks will usually leave like a white crusty trail. Pretty obvious. up in the air, and then we typically will just dump the oil out of it because there's a lot of other things we have to look at, and it's nice to just get the oil draining first and then set the car back down a little bit and continue on with some of the inspections.
Thank you.
While it's up there, we will check the pressure in all 4 tires, and by we I mean Marie. So spin that around, reach in there. Them hubcaps are a pain in the neck with them little short valve stems. If you don't know what your tire pressures are supposed to be, most modern day cars, I would say early 2000s and up, if you open the driver's side door jamb, that information is posted in there. Don't always go by with what it says on the tire. For example, like this one is max of 44. You know, if we look on the door jamb, we'll likely see this car is, 32 to 35, somewhere in that neighborhood. So see a lot of cars come in, let's say, particularly pickup truck, they put a 6-ply tire on it. It's got a max PSI of 50, or an 8-ply, it's got a max PSI of 65. It's a half ton. They got to blow it up real hard. Traction's terrible. The ride quality is terrible. So just go by what the manufacturer says, not what the tire says. You want to let it down a little bit, Amy?
Oh, there you go.
Sometimes you got to hold in on that. It can be a pain in the neck. Take time, Marie. We got all day.
No.
Foul.
I see that. No, I did it.
There you go.
Oh,
How's that, huh?
31.7.
All right, blow up 35. 35, stay alive. That's the old saying. I don't really know if
We're
that's
at 35.3.
close enough.
Okay.
So typically you can see enough of the brakes when you're doing an oil change, just looking through the wheel. Now these wheels just have the holes cut in them. You can spin them around and give a peek through and kind of see the backing plate and its relationship to the distance to the rotor and get an idea, are my pads wearing down? You can see the edges of the rotor when you spin it, see if there's any big rust chunks or cracks. Now, any of you following the SMA channel know that Hannah just did these brakes, so they still look to be in great shape. How many miles have you put on them? 3,000?
Yeah.
So they still look good. If you look at them and you're like, I just can't see that, it looks really close, usually at that point I get the customer's permission, pull the wheel, and have a closer look at them. Well, I've got the car down like this, good idea to have a look at the springs, front and rear. Usually we'll grab the wheel, give it a wiggle up and down, checking for wheel bearing movement. We'll go side to side, give it a feel, checking for inner and outer tie rod ends. And a lot of times you do like a 3 o'clock, 7 o'clock hold, right? Is that 1? Yeah, 3 and 7, a little bit past 7. Give it a wiggle that way. And then again, like 11 and 4. And a lot of times if you have a bad ball joint, you'll feel it like that. Or sometimes it's grabbing the bottom of the tire and pulling it depending on the suspension configuration. But we'll just make sure everything's tight, go around and do that to all 4 wheels, all the bearings, even in the back, and make sure everything looks good there. Yep, just left to right. Up and down, give it a little shake, up and down, see if you feel anything. And then on these front-wheel drive cars, you can also take the wheel and just give it a spin. Give it a spin. Yeah, just give it like a wheel of fortune. And then if you have a failing rear wheel bearing, you can oftentimes hear it clear as day. But most customers will, complain about it. You'll hear it, it's growling, they say something. Spinner. Sure. Quiet. How's the tire pressure business going, Marie?
Good.
All of them are good?
Basically.
Hannah's life depends on you,
I don't want to be on the side of the road.
With a flat tire.
You coming to change
Ever
it?
since you.
I come help you change it. Unless you're at work.
Did you give a look at that spring yet, Hannah?
I didn't.
So you gotta watch some of them because they will break like the bottom couple inches off the coil. And the easiest way, if you can't see them, is just feel around them. You'll feel, usually when the spring breaks, it's very jagged, it's a very pointed edge on it. And same thing up at the top. Just give a look at the strut bearings, make sure, particularly in upstate New York here, that they're not corroded and broken off and the spring's actually jammed right up against the top. You missed that.
Oh.
You fired, Hannah.
10.
So it felt to me that there's a little bit of movement over here, and it feels like a lower ball joint. Can you guys see that? Come stick your head around here, ladies, and see if there's going to be some movement from the knuckle in relationship to the lower control arm here.
Oh, yep.
Is there?
It moving?
Yep.
Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
So,
It's moving, yep.
in a bad way?
Sadly.
No, see, I can't feel it right there.
No. Here, am I able to? Why'd you, like this side to side?
Let me just grab this corner, yeah, right there, so.
Yeah.
Ooh, right in my melon. So you guys can see that. Let me enhance. There we go. So that's what a bad ball joint looks like. See if you can feel it again, Hannah. Grab the tire at 11 and 4 and give it your best.
I can't reach.
So you can't feel it. Try just grabbing like down the bottom corner of the tire and giving it. Yep. I don't think you got enough lead in your pencil, Hannah. So it's kind of a push-pull method that you use. So you're going to be pushing in one hand, pulling with the other. It's, I don't know. Actually, this car is bad enough you can actually just do it in the bottom corner, but this is why you always check with multiple directions, because you grab it top to bottom, like I say, and you don't feel anything. Side to side, this one's bad enough that you do, but it's usually this kitty corner method that will get you on the ball joint. So, all right, we learned something new. Can you do it?
I don't get it.
You're just gonna have to wait for your wheels to fall off for you to know.
I don't get this. I never have been able to do this.
Yeah, I know. You're always a poor tire shaker, Hannah. So on this particular car, 2007 Chevrolet Malibu, you have to buy the entire control arm. Now these control arms are made out of aluminum. For our friends across the pond, the ball joint is not replaceable separately, which on these typically you'll see the control arm bushings are usually pretty hammered at that point. So you get a new control arm, comes with a new ball joint, both front and rear bushings. So not a big deal, but this is the kind of stuff we like to check during oil changes, because some, you know, if you, a lot of times if you know you're a home gamer just doing spill and fills or going to the Jiffy Lube, a lot of this stuff may not get checked, and it's good just this way we can advise our customer, let them know, hey, here's what we see, here's an estimate, what would you like to do? Which one's lining up? Keep going. That's 7, so you're on the line, so it's 7. So Hannah's using a tread depth checker. This little guy right here, it's going to give us millimeters on one side for our metric folks and 30/2 of an inch on the other. So she's just going to come, look at the tires, make sure they're worn nice and even, which hers are. They've been rotated probably every other oil change or so. Stick your tread depth checker up here, lightly push it in, make sure it's bottomed out. Then you come and read, and you can see her front tires are at about 7/32 of tread. Going to compare them to the other 3 tires on the vehicle, see where they're at for tread depth, and that's going to help dictate whether or not the vehicle needs an alignment, a tire rotation rather. The other things you're going to want to look at too, particularly on cars that are all-wheel drive, the tire tread depth seems to wear very evenly, but what's going to dictate whether or not you need a rotation is going to be shoulder wear on the front. Your back tires usually wear nice and square, where your front tires will start getting some shoulder wear, and by rotating them it keeps that from happening.
Yep. We're set. All 7.
All 7?
Yep.
Plus, what we in the September, you're going to be throwing on snow tires probably before
Yep.
too long anyways. So Hannah runs a full set of snows already mounted on wheels, which is a great thing to do. And so does Miss Marie on her little Honda she drives. And what's nice is it gives us the ability to run your all-season tires or summer tires right to the last minute, get big snow prediction, throw your tires on, and you can get, I mean, how many years you got out of your snows? Well, you just bought new
I
ones.
just bought one, so
Yeah.
hopefully a few more.
Yeah, typically what I'll see customers do that they have snow tires mounted on a separate set of wheels will get 4 or 5 winters out of them, because sometimes you can save them and you might not have to put them on until January or late December, and then you're able to yank them off, you know, March, early April. So the car back up in the air, waiting for it to finish draining. We're just going to check the rear springs on here. This particular car, these Malibus, are notorious for breaking the bottoms off the rear springs. This car looks good. Have you put rear springs in this?
I have not.
They're amazing. Look at stuff. A lot of times we'll look at stuff that pertains to state inspection. So, you know, we're going to look at brake hoses, you know, see if there's any cracks or splits in those. Just overall visual inspection. You know, our control arms rusting off, our bushings ripped out. just anything that can be out of place. Anything that might need attention. You know, look at the conditions of the brake lines and fuel lines. Now this car's been fluid filmed and crowned. So, and then as we work our way up towards the front, this car actually has some aftermarket tie rods on it. Give them a shot of grease. You know, check to see your sway bar links. You know, are your sway bar links tight? Do they have grease fittings on them? All kinds of stuff like that. And then overall condition of like the subframe. You know, if we start seeing stuff that's getting crusty, we'll get out the judge, give it a few pokes, see if it's really that bad. This car is in actually pretty good shape for the year. And then again, you can see the brakes from underneath on the inside. You know, have a look at those, but again, we all know those are relatively new. CV boots, see if the boots are cracked. You know, look at struts, or the struts leaking. You know, overall looking at the engine. Is the engine, you know, is there oil puking out of everything? You know, looking at the axle seals, you know, are they puking transmission fluid? You know, the power steering rack. This car is electronic, so it better not be leaking power steering fluid. You just melt my little heart, Hannah. You actually miss the smell of brake clean?
Do I have to do the little like?
Well, yeah, show them the brake clean. Come on. There you go. So she's just gonna clean off around where the drain plug goes on the oil pan, and then she's gonna blast off the drain plug. There you go, that's good enough there, lady. And then she'll clean off the drain plug. They have a faced rubber washer on those, make sure that's in good shape. Now a lot of cars use aluminum crush sleeves or copper or plastic. So put that in, tighten that up. The other thing I want to mention, when we were under the hood and we were checking fluids, you just notice on this Hannah's car, besides not having power steering fluid, the transmission is not able to be checked from up top. Her car has an overflow plug right down here. This car actually has to be checked on the lift with it running. Pull the plug out of the transmission, make sure it's dribbling out after it's fully warmed. If not, then you go up top and fill it up. Done underneath, we got to fill it back up with oil. Definitely do not forget that step. Miss Hannah will do that. This car takes 5 quarts of the 530.
It's the easiest way to do it.
Whoa, yeah, I'll give you a hand. There's your oil or air filter, Mary. Usually what I do, hold my finger over the end, bring that down to the oil fill, take my finger off it, and then pour from there.
You can just leave it there.
Oh, you want me to just leave it there? You don't want to go for it? You got it?
Got it.
If she flicks out on it, now be careful you don't spill it over this edge. It's all in the technique, Miss Hannah. Okay. Yep, yeah, you just set it right down in there. What's that? So, you got your connector.
Oh, yes.
Push the gray thing in. The gray lock. Let's give it a push. There you go.
Thank you.
So, there's that.
Perfect.
My job here is done. You're gonna be there forever, Hannah, if you wait for it to dribble.
Every drop.
And just grab it, tip it. Yeah, just like that. You guys are gonna be taking over my job soon.
We can do this side.
Oh, let's see.
We'll do oil changes. Then you can just check my ball joints and stuff and all the others. So I can do that.
Perfect, Marie. Yeah, everybody have clean oil, bad ball joints.
Yep.
I don't believe this car has a cabin air filter, but that would be another filter that you could check on it. Or a fuel filter. A lot of times those are underneath the vehicles. This car is not, it's actually in the fuel tank. Now we're good to start it, everything looks good. We're gonna take fired up, visual inspection, check for leaks, make sure it's not leaking around the oil filter housing, take a quick peek underneath it, make sure it's not leaking around the drain plug, double check the oil level, and ship it. So you can hear that change in tone from the time it starts with no oil pressure to the time it gets oil pressure. Once your light goes out, let it run for 20 seconds or so, shut it off, let it sit for about a minute, and then check the oil level. Would you like to do the honors, Marie? The big yellow stick. Give her a pull. There you go. Some oil dipsticks are difficult to read when the oil level, or when the oil is super clean. Yep.
Just turn it around.
Just turn it around. Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of times you can. And this stick and flip it around, and you can see that clear line on it. And then you just kind of follow that back around. That's right to the max mark.
Perfect.
Perfect,
You did
Hannah.
your job well.
Go give yourself an award.
An award.
Yes.
Ice cream award?
Yes.
Ice cream award.
Ice cream
Best
sounds
kind of
great.
award.
Oh, click that in all the way, Marie. There you
There
go.
it is.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Don't worry, Hannah. They can't smell how bad your car smells. So one thing we want to do when you're done is you want to flip through the menu here, get to the oil life reset. We're going to press and hold the enter. It says it is acknowledged. We will go back through, see if we can find it here. Oil life's at 100%. That's how you do it on this cars. Other cars have, a lot different procedures. Get back to where we were. However we do that, there we go. Last but not least, the oil change reminder sticker up in the corner of the window. Complete with smiley face, it looks like.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that's it. That is the basic service that we would provide here at SMA, bringing in your standard everyday front-wheel drive car for the oil change or maintenance, however you want to look at it. Any questions, ladies? Comments, concerns? Did you learn anything?
Check the tire pressure. Fill it up.
Change your air filter?
Yep.
Look your car over?
Where the clamp unscrews.
Oh, not to check a ball joint?
Yes. Yep.
Never trust Hannah if she says the front end is tight. But that's just a few of the procedures that I'm sure we probably skipped a couple things. It's kind of hard for me sometimes to just pull this stuff off the cuff, what we look at, because I've been doing it for so long. But we essentially will just look the car over, make sure it's safe, and just provide estimates or let the customer know what's happening, what I think should be, repaired on the car, things that need to have attention. Now, there are other items you want to keep in mind that might not just be visual, but stuff that is replaced on time basis, other fluids, differential fluids, stuff like that. So if you have the owner's manual for your vehicle, a lot of times those maintenance schedules are all laid out in there, or you can ask your mechanic for one. We have software where we can look up a maintenance schedule, whether it's time or mileage based recommendations from the manufacturer when you should do certain maintenance items. Now, Hannah's car is going to have to come back in for the ball joint / control arm, and also the brake fluid flush, which we'll do at a later date, perhaps have a video. I'll turn these two ladies loose on it and they can do that.
Ooh,
and
yes.
We'll record it. So be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, go down there, click subscribe, ring the bell, leave your questions, comments, criticisms, and concerns down there below. And just remember, viewers, if we can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.